The 2010s was one of the wildest decades of NHL hockey. We saw perhaps the only modern-day dynasty. A riot broke out after a team lost the Stanley Cup. One of the most talented players in the history of the sport began his career, and dreams finally came true. The 2010s were a ride, so let's take a look at one of the most thrilling and controversial decades of NHL hockey. Now listen, the offseason is finally almost done, and if you're looking to get some tickets on NFL games or NHL preseason games, the best way to do it is through SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the best and easiest way to score a deal on your tickets. They rate every seat from a score of 1 to 10, so you know exactly what kind of deal you're getting. If it's red, it means that deal is no bueno. If it's green, that's a banger, and you should snatch up those tickets. The best part is SeatGeek is hooking us up for the summertime. You just got to use code HOCKEY15 at checkout, and they'll give you 15% off your next order. You know me, if you watch the channel, I'm usually buried in the app trying to find some last-minute deals on Leaf games throughout the season. I also found some damn good last-minute deals on Jays games for me and my friends this summer, so if you want to do the same for the upcoming NFL and NHL season, you gotta download the app. So for your next live event, make sure you use code HOCKEY15 to get 15% off your next purchase. All you gotta do is just click the link in our description down below to get the best seats in the house while scoring a great deal from SeatGeek. Starting in 2010, the NHL was dominated by Twins. Yes, the Sedin Twins were at their peak. Daniel scored 85 points in just 63 games, while Henrik played a full 82, registering 83 assists and 112 points, leading the league in both categories, along with winning the Hart Trophy as the league MVP. Alex Ovechkin, that handsome son of a gun, finished second in scoring and MVP voting while he helped lead the Capitals to a dominant 54-win season. That was good enough for the President's Trophy, but too bad that damn trophy is a curse. Now, the Caps would also make the Leafs proud and blow a 3-1 series lead in the first round to the Montreal Canadiens. Ovi also finished second in goals, just one behind Sidney the Kidney and a 19-year-old Steven Stamkos, who was on a Tampa team that looked to be on the rise. The Buffalo Sabres, however, were in their prime and carried by Vezina winner Ryan Miller. The Sabres actually won their division with 45 wins, while rookie defenseman Tyler Myers took home the Calder Trophy. Man, does the future look bright in Buffalo. But halfway through the season, we also got to see best-on-best hockey on the international stage at the 2010 Winter Olympics. 2-2 overtime between Canada and USA. Sid yells the Iggy heard around the world and then reminds Ryan Miller to close his damn legs for the rest of eternity while he scores the golden goal. Canada remains on top of the hockey world with their 22-year-old prodigy leading the way for the future. Now, two members of the Canadian national team were Jonathan Toews and Duncan Keith. They had great years for themselves as the Blackhawks finished with the third best record in the league. Toews registered 68 points while Keith recorded 69 and captured his first Norris. Chicago stormed their way through the playoffs, beating Nashville and Vancouver in 6 before sweeping the top-seeded Sharks. Now, in the East, things were a bit more complicated. The Canadiens made it all the way to the conference finals after they knocked off both Ovi and Sid in a 7-game series, while their opponents, the Flyers, had a journey to get to this spot. First, they got into the postseason on the last day of the season with a shootout win over the Rangers. Then they beat the Devils in 5, only to move on and win 4 straight against Boston after going down 3-0 in the series. They made quick work of Montreal in 5 games and then meet the Blackhawks in the final. But destiny will not be denied. Game 6, OT, Patrick Kane takes a shot. No one knows where the hell the puck is. He's jumping around like a jagaloon, and rightfully so, because he's the only damn person in the world who knows that they just won the Stanley Cup. The Blackhawks end their 49-year-long cup drought to close the 2010 season. So now moving on to 2011, well, there's some similarities. The Sedins once again dominated, and an original 6 team was crowned champion for the second year in a row. However, we also saw hockey's biggest superstar have his career completely altered and even put into question. At 23 years old, Sidney Crosby was having another fantastic season, and halfway through the year, he was pacing the league in points. But in a Winter Classic game against their bitter rivals in the Capitals, they won 3-1, but Crosby took this hit from David Steckel, and he wasn't right. He would play one more game and then would be out for the rest of the season with a concussion. Without him, the scoring title went to Daniel Sedin, who had 104 points, and Vancouver won 54 games and that ever-so-lovely President's Trophy. All of this while a 40-year-old Nicholas Lindstrom won his 7th Norris Trophy, guiding Detroit to their 20th consecutive season in the playoffs. The Old Heads were dominating this season as a 35-year-old Tim Thomas won his 2nd career Vezina, but the surprise of the whole year was over in Anaheim. A 25-year-old young buck, Corey Perry, who had never scored more than 32 goals in a season, went off for 50 and contributed over 40% of his team goals, helping the Ducks win 47 games and earn himself the MVP trophy. Meanwhile, the Carolina Hurricanes are still one of the most irrelevant teams in the league, but there's an 18-year-old rookie named Jeff Skinner who came in, scored 31 goals, and got 63 points to win the Calder Trophy. That guy may be huge if he ever makes it to the playoffs. And before the playoffs started, the Atlanta Thrashers played their final game before being relocated to Winnipeg. Turns out the second attempt for hockey in Atlanta was no bueno. Maybe one day Gary decides a third time's a charm. In the playoffs, that President Trophy curse was tested. After the Canucks won the first 3 games against Chicago, they would blow the 3-0 series lead only for Alex Burrows to slay the Dragon in overtime and win in Game 7. The Canucks went on a run after that. They beat Nashville in 6 and San Jose in 5 to book their ticket to the Cup. In the East, without Malkin and Crosby in the postseason, Pittsburgh fell to Tampa in 7, and then the Bolts swept the top-seeded Caps in the second round before meeting the Bruins in the conference final. Too bad, Tim Thomas is a man possessed. 1-0 shutout in Game 7 sets up a Boston versus Vancouver final that was filled with pure hate. Cheap shots, late hits, mind games, bad blood, you name it, this series had it. A back and forth war that went 7 games ended with Boston shutting out Vancouver 4-0 on home ice to end their 39-year cup drought, while triggering the city of Vancouver into a riot. The fireworks kept on going for the 2012 season as headlines were filled with talks of when Sidney Crosby would return from his concussion. In the meantime, Evgeny Malkin spent the year showing that he was no second fiddle. Malkin in the middle was born and he torched the league, putting up 50 goals and leading the NHL with 109 points, his 2nd Art Ross trophy and 1st Hart trophy as the league MVP. When Crosby did return, he did it in style, going off for 2 goals and 4 points in a 5-0 win over the Islanders. Crosby is back, and Gary and the fellas can rest easy knowing that their face of the league is finally healthy. In the West, Vancouver continued to dominate to start the decade, winning their 2nd straight President's Trophy. How great. In Tampa, remember that kid Steven Stamkos? Well, yeah, he's had another phenomenal season, scoring 60 goals. Only the 2nd time that's happened in the last 15 years, and finishing 2nd in Hart voting despite the Bolts missing the playoffs completely. However, the youth movement is in full force. A 19-year-old Gabriel Landeskog steps right into the NHL, puts up 52 points, and wins the Calder. That's topped by a 21-year-old Swede named Erik Karlsson winning his 1st Norris Trophy. Winnipeg fans also finally got their team back. Welcome back, Jets, and the welcome party was great, but they missed the playoffs because, well, they're still basically the Atlanta Thrashers. When the playoffs begin, an 8th-seeded LA Kings team is making noise. They shocked everyone, beating the Canucks in 5, President Trophy curse yet again, and steamrolling the Coyotes and Blues on their way to the Cup final. On the other side, we were getting one of the last runs from Martin Brodeur. The New Jersey Devils pulled off an upset of their own, taking down the top-seeded Rangers, but the Kings would not be denied. A few years back, the Kings did make the good choice of getting rid of Jacques Lecoq-Grande and drafting Jonathan Quick to be their future goalie. He quickly became the most pivotal piece of this historic run. A 141 goals against average along with a ridiculous 941 save percentage earned that man the Conn Smythe Trophy as the Kings won their 1st Stanley Cup in franchise history and became the first ever 8 seed to win a championship in professional sports history. What a year, and after all that momentum, Gary says let's pump the brakes here in 2013. A labor dispute took away nearly half a season of hockey. Once everyone stopped crying over money, the regular season got started and it did not disappoint. The 2013 season was supposed to start in October, but it made everyone wait until January of 2013. Some guys like Patrick Kane went over to Switzerland to keep the hands warm, and boy did it pay off. Chicago went until March until they lost a game in regulation, getting out to a ridiculous 21-0-3 start. They pick up that cursed President's Trophy with a record of 36-7-5. In the East, the Penguins topped the standings going 36-12 with the league's #1 offense, while Washington wasn't far behind at number 4, led by Alex Ovechkin. Ovi just had another monster year, winning his 3rd Hart and 3rd Rocket, leading the league in goals with 32. As for Tampa, Marty St. Louis turns back the clock and leads the league with 60 points. The other Florida team, though, is still lost in irrelevancy, but luckily for the Panthers, their rookie Jonathan Huberdeau takes home that shiny Calder trophy. The kid has all the makings to be a career Panther, that's for sure. Surprise of the year goes to Montreal Canadiens' PK Subban. Breakout season, 38 points in 42 games, Norris Trophy, and the Habs win their division. See you later. Then the theatrics start in the playoffs. The Hawks seem to be unkillable. With Detroit taking a 3-1 series lead, Chicago came all the way back to win in 7, only to meet the defending Cup champs in LA. However, the Blackhawks have prime showtime in Patrick Kane. Double OT, 2-on-1, one-timer, it's over. The sick puppy hits one of the greatest celebrations of all time. Heartbreaker, the Kings are sent home packing in 5 games. Now, speaking of teams that do not die, the Boston Bruins were nothing but a cold body after being down 4-1 with 14 minutes left in the 3rd period of a Game 7. But this is the first round, and they are playing the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we would see one of the greatest comebacks, not only of this decade, but in NHL history, as the Bruins overcame a 3-goal deficit and won an OT. They sweep Sidney the Kidney and hold the league's best offense to only 2 goals for the entire series. If anyone could shut down the Hawks, it would be Boston, but in a do-or-die Game 6, the Bruins held a 1-goal lead in the final minutes. All they had to do was hang on to force a Game 7. But 2013 is the year of the comeback, or chokes, depending on how you look at it. The infamous 17 seconds is all it took for Chicago to score 2 goals. David Bolin with an all-time early celly toss in the gloves. He can't even hide the excitement. Chicago hangs on and wins their 2nd cup in 4 years while going down as one of the most dominant teams in recent NHL memory. Now, as 2014 rolled around, the NHL would get a little shakeup as teams realigned conferences. The Blue Jackets and Red Wings were moved to the Eastern Conference, and Gary finally looked at a map and moved the Jets to the West. The league transitioned from 6 total divisions to 4, along with getting rid of the traditional 1v8 playoff format. A move that absolutely every hockey fan adores until this very day. None of this affected the Boston Bruins as they followed up their loss in the Cup Finals last year with a 54-win President Trophy season headlined by Tuukka Rask winning his first Vezina. At the same time, Sidney Crosby played more than 41 games in a season for the first time since 2010, and he didn't disappoint. The 26-year-old dominated the league, winning the scoring title by almost 20 points with 104 and winning his 2nd MVP trophy. Oh, and he also captained Team Canada to a 2nd straight gold medal at the Winter Olympics in Sochi. Can't wait to see what he does at the 2018 Olympics. Now, the Hawks' dominance seemed unfair at this point, as Duncan Keith would pick up his 2nd Norris Trophy of the decade. No big deal, but out of the depths of hell to beat Chicago for the division is the Colorado Avalanche. From worst to first, and it's headlined by their 1st overall pick in Nathan MacKinnon. The 18-year-old looks like an absolute freight train, skates like the wind, and wins Rookie of the Year, putting up 63 points. An under-23 core of Gabriel Landeskog, Matt Duchene, Ryan O'Reilly, and Semyon Varlamov means the Avs could be a problem for years to come. Of course, Ovechkin would lead the league in goals again, but his 52 goals weren't even enough for the Caps to make it into the playoffs. And so, the narrative around if you can truly win with Alex Ovechkin starts to make a little bit of noise. Now, speaking of noise, the New York Rangers are doing just that, and in a controversial way, too. The Eastern Conference Finals had the Habs versus the Rangers. Carey Price was a man on a mission for Montreal during this run until Chris Kreider goes into him like a goddamn bowling ball and right into Price's knee so that he's knocked out of the series. Montreal fans still hate Chris Kreider to this day as the Rangers go on to beat the Habs and go to the final to meet none other than the LA Kings yet again. LA had a dramatic run of their own after falling behind 3-0 to San Jose in the first round. The Sharks, though, they would suffer one of the worst chokes in NHL history, losing 4 straight. LA says thanks for sucking, beats the Ducks, and then goes 7 games to Chicago in arguably the best heavyweight matchup of the decade. 2 juggernauts giving each other their double bird and smacking each other around only for LA to get the last laugh to go to the finals. It was the Kings versus the King, Henrik Lundqvist, who's looking for his first Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, Alec Martinez breaks his heart. Double OT, Game 5, series clincher, gives LA their second cup in 3 years. Now in 2015, if you like scoring, too bad you didn't like hockey this season. We saw league scoring drop to one of its lowest points ever. One reason why was this man, Carey Price. Coming back from the Kreider injury, this guy turned into an absolute brick wall. 44 wins, a .933 save percentage, and a 1.96 goals against was one of the best seasons we've ever seen from a goalie. The first tendy to win the Hart Trophy since 2002, but like I said, scoring goals was a chore for the entire league. The man who won the scoring title this year was Jamie Benn. Yeah, you heard me right. Jamie Benn won the scoring title with just 87 points. No one probably wanted to score this year because this one was the year to tank, with some kid named Connor McDavid touted to be the next one. If you were ass, this was the year to be ass, and no one was more shite than the Buffalo Sabres. The only thing they had to win was the lottery. Ovi, on the other hand, he still scored 53 goals in his sleep, absolute machine, that still ended up falling short in the second round of the playoffs to the Rangers. The Ovi lore of not winning the big one gets a little bit stronger. At this point, though, the Rangers will be running into a Tampa team in the conference finals that had hit their stride. Stamkos, Kucherov, Hedman, they were the highest scoring team in the league while also having an all-star in net in Ben Bishop. But this is the era of the Chicago Blackhawks. A dynasty is being born right in front of our eyes. 6 games and another Patrick Kane finish to put a stamp on one of the most dominant runs we've seen in years. 3 cups in 6 years, the Blackhawks are a wagon and no one can stop them. However, in 2016, there was a new future face of the league. Remember that Sabres tank job? Well, turns out they can't even win the damn lottery. They lost the McDavid sweepstakes to the Edmonton Oilers and had to settle for Jack Eichel. Don't worry though, Sabres fans. He is unbelievable. He will be the face of your franchise for many years to come. But before the regular season could even begin, there was bids for a team in either Quebec City or Las Vegas. Not sure how a team in Vegas would even stay sober enough to hit the ice, but we'll see how that goes. Now, if you're sick of the Chicago Blackhawks, good. So is everyone else, but Patrick Kane doesn't care. He becomes the first American-born player ever to win the Art Ross and the Hart Trophy with 106 points. As if Chicago wasn't stacked enough, they brought over some 24-year-old kid from the KHL named Artemi Panarin. He proceeded to win Rookie of the Year as well. On the other side of the East, the Capitals again dominated. 56-win season, President Trophy. What are they doing? Ovi, still tucking 50 for yet another Rocket. This may finally be the year. It has to be. But if there's one man who's stopping him, it's his arch rival in Sidney Crosby. After beating Philly in 6, Washington and Pittsburgh would meet in the playoffs for the first time since 2009, where Sid and Ovi had dueling hat tricks, only for Crosby's Penguins to move on and win a cup. This year seemed to follow the same pattern, a 6-game war that would ultimately end with Nick Bonino telling the Caps to go Nina no into the night as Ovi and the Caps' second-round narrative continues to live on. After Pittsburgh narrowly beat Tampa in 7 games, the Penguins would meet the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks, despite having one of the most productive and talented cores of this decade, always seem to either fall short of expectations or just flat out choke in the biggest moments. But this year seemed different. Logan Couture led the entire playoffs in scoring, and goaltender Martin Jones was dialed in. Yet there's one thing they don't have, and that is Phil the Thrill Kessel. On the best third line in hockey, consisting of Hagelin, Bonino, and Kessel, that HBK line, the hot dog-eating son of a gun was Pittsburgh's leading scorer throughout the entire playoffs. The depth of Pittsburgh was way too deep as the Penguins win their second cup in the Crosby era. By the time the 2017 season kicked off, the league had announced that the city of Las Vegas had won Gary's bid for expansion. It's a bold strategy, Cotton, but let's see how it pays off. However, this season, the league decided to bring back the World Cup of Hockey. 8 teams that included 2 mixed squads, Team Europe and Team North America, which consisted of the very best U23 Canadian and American stars. A stacked lineup of McKinnon, McDavid, Matthews, Eichel, Gaudreau were all on one team to form one of the most exciting groups we've ever seen. Despite falling short with Crosby's Team Canada yet again winning the whole damn thing, Team North America showcased the level of talent that was coming in with the next wave of NHL players. One of them being the first overall pick in Austin Matthews. After years of irrelevancy and failure, the Toronto Maple Leafs got to select Austin Matthews with the first overall pick prior to the season. In his debut, he does the honor of keeping everyone in Leaf Nation humble by scoring 4 goals. Toronto, of course, still lost the game 5-4, but with him winning the Calder along with that young core of Marner and Nylander, they looked poised for years of playoff success and parade planning. So do the Edmonton Oilers, because Connor McDavid is just in his sophomore year and he's already taken over the league. 100 points nabs him the Hart Trophy, the Art Ross, and the Ted Lindsay. Not to mention, he gets the Oilers back in the playoffs after a decade of darkness. To no one's surprise, though, the Blackhawks once again dominated, finishing with the best record in the Western Conference. They get a nice ticket to meet the 8th seed Predators and royally blow it. Not only do they lose, but they get swept, indicating that the Blackhawks dynasty may truly be coming to an end. This year, it seemed like the Preds were a team of destiny. After slaying the Blackhawk Dragon, they beat St. Louis and Anaheim in 6 for a miracle run to the finals. In the East, it was a similar story to last year. Again, the Capitals won that President Trophy and ran into the Penguins for the second round, where they lost in 6. At this point, it seems like the Crosby versus Ovi debate isn't even a debate, and Pittsburgh would go on to the conference finals to take on another Cinderella run team in the Ottawa Senators. In an extremely tight 7-game series, Crosby and Kunitz would team up on a Game 7 OT goal that would haunt Senators fans until the day they die. So that sets up a Preds versus Penguins Cup final. Bad blood right away. Subban and Crosby go after each other. There's mind games in the media about bad breath, but Crosby and the Penguins don't get phased. They take the series in 6 games as Sid wins back-to-back Conn Smythe trophies and Stanley Cups to cement his Hall of Fame career at just the age of 29. Heading into 2018, the league was finally introduced to the Vegas Golden Knights, a team of misfits and unwanted scraps that were left unprotected by 30 other teams in the expansion draft were all selected to bring hockey to Vegas. Now, the last time the NHL expanded in 2001 with the Wild and Blue Jackets, both missed the playoffs by a wide margin, so probably the same for Vegas. Out of nowhere, though, Taylor Hall is having a season for the ages with the New Jersey Devils. 39 goals, 93 points. He contributed to more than 38% of the Devils' goals that season, while being 41 points ahead of anyone on his team. Even though he didn't lead the league in scoring, the man dragged a potential lottery team into the playoffs, so he won the Hart Trophy. Meanwhile, his old team in Edmonton still had Connor McDavid, who once again went off and led the league in scoring, but this time he wasn't able to drag them into the playoffs. Nashville is still good. They got Pecorina taking home the Vezina. How are ya? Meanwhile, this was still an era where the Islanders could actually score goals. Big part of that was because rookie Matt Barzal put up 85 points to win the Calder Trophy. But the real story in the East was the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Bolts dominated all year, ending up with the best record in the conference and a nice little Norris Trophy for Victor Hedman. They beat New Jersey and Boston before finding themselves in the conference finals for the 3rd time in the last 4 years against the Capitals. That's new. Washington took a break from winning all those President trophies, and it clearly paid off. They beat Columbus in the first round and met Pittsburgh in the second round for the 3rd year in a row. But this time, they finally slayed their demons. Ovi knocks out Sid, and they make it past the second round for the first time in the Ovi era. The Caps beat Tampa in 7 to go to the Cup final, and they meet the Vegas Golden Knights. That's right. In their first year of existence, Vegas absolutely dominated all year, breaking every expansion record. They won 51 games, the Pacific Division, and beat LA, San Jose, and Winnipeg on their way to the finals. One of the craziest underdog stories that we've ever seen was materializing, but the Russian machine made a promise at the beginning of the season.
We're not gonna be fucking sucked this year!
They indeed did not suck this year, and Ovi wasn't gonna be denied. The Great Eight finally wins his first Stanley Cup and kicks off one of the most iconic Cup celebrations we've ever seen. And so, while Ovi's getting absolutely smashed and swimming in fountains, the Tampa Bay Lightning lurk for revenge going into the 2019 season. The Lightning were on a mission. Andrei Vasilevsky made shooters question the meaning of life. Nikita Kucherov scored more points than anyone since the mid-90s, and the Bolts won a record 62 games to take home that shiny President's Trophy. While over in the West, the story was the St. Louis Blues. The Blues were expected to be a playoff team to start the year, but they were dreadful. They dropped 7 of their first 9, and on January 1st, they had the worst record in the league. So they mixed in a coaching change to bring in Craig Berube, and they got a surge from a no-name goalie. They were the hottest team in hockey in the second half of the year, and that no-name goalie in Jordan Binnington won 24 of his 30 games after the new year, and the Blues won 30 of their final 45 games to make the playoffs. Elsewhere around the league, this year's Norris Trophy goes to the Italian Stallion. 35-year-old Mark Giordano puts up 74 points, while in Vancouver, our rookie Elias Pettersson takes home the Calder. Now, in the final 2 games of the season, it was crunch time for the Jackets. They won their last 2 matchups of the regular season to clinch a playoff spot, and their reward was playing Tampa. 62-win team, Vezina and Art Ross winners on the same squad. This was a cakewalk. They go up 3-0 in game 1, and Tampa decides to have a smoke and a pancake, take their foot off the gas. They fall asleep at the wheel, and the Jackets come all the way back to win 4-3. From that point on, the Jackets do the unthinkable. Tampa never recovers, and they get swept in the first round to complete one of the biggest upsets in NHL history. It was a Cinderella story that was cut short by none other than the Boston Bruins. They came into the decade winning a cup, and they were looking to do the same leaving it. However, they would have to crush one more magical run as they would meet St. Louis in the finals. The Blues rode that momentum like a pony all the way through Winnipeg, double OT of Game 7 against Dallas, and the Sharks in 6. In a back-and-forth series that produced a classic in every game, it set up Game 7 at TD Garden in Boston. Unfortunately for the Bruins, born was the ghost of Game 7 Jordan Binnington. A stone wall along with a dominating 4-0 win completed one of the greatest single-season turnarounds in sports history. From worst to first, the St. Louis Blues took home their first Stanley Cup in franchise history to end an unforgettable decade of hockey. So, what year was your favorite? Who got robbed? Who lived up to the hype? Let us know in the comments down below. And as always, drop a like, subscribe, and check out some of our other breakdowns and deep dives on the channel to get you ready for the next NHL season.